A great poet, an excellent orator and a statesman who earned respect from across the political spectrum. Former Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajapayee has left the world for heavenly abode. He was cremated with full state honours at Smriti Sthal, situated on the banks of the Yamuna River in Delhi. His adopted daughter, Namita Bhattacharya, lit the funeral pyre. Vajpayee's mortal remains were kept at the BJP headquarters in Delhi for people to pay their last respects. Thousands of mourners thronged the BJP headquarters to capture the moment on their phones as Vajpayee's funeral procession left for Smriti Sthal for the last rites. Prime Minister Narendra Modi and BJP President Amit Shah led the funeral procession. Thousands of mourners accompanied Vajpayee before he made his final journey. Atal Bihari Vajapayee is not just remembered as a dynamic politician. His historic achievements as a Prime Minister of India had put the country squarely on the global map. So what are Vajpayee's unforgettable triumphs? Joining us to discuss this further are four individuals today. Four individuals who really form Team Vajpayee. Ladies and gentlemen, we at CNBC TV 18 are trying to put you in touch with Team Vajpayee to just explain you key aspects of his defense strategy, his foreign policy and economic policy as well. We want to begin by introducing retired Army Chief General VP Malik, who led the Kargil War, Vivek Kaju, who was heading the Pakistan desk in the Ministry of External Affairs during Vajpayee's tenure, Mr. S. Narayan, who was the Finance Secretary, and also in our Delhi studios, Pradeep Bejal, who was the Disinvestment Secretary. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us. Our first question to Mr. S. Narayan. Mr. Narayan, you were the Finance Secretary in the Vajpayee PMO. And when we remember Mr. Atal Bihari Vajpayee, we remember Pokhran, we remember Kargil, we remember Pakistan. Do you often feel that his economic contribution is overlooked or not talked about enough?
I wouldn't say they are overlooked, but I would say that the economic achievements during his tenure were extremely significant. For example, the National Highway Program that he initiated for connecting North-South and East and West is today considered to be one of the hallmarks of the infrastructure development in the country. And the kind of changes that he brought into the telecom sector really made that sector grow over the last 15 to 16 years. And in several aspects, in opening up of the FIPB, foreign investments, in creating institutional stability in banks, and you know, that is a time also when a lot of bad loans were cleared up to the advantage of the government in the steel sector, the textile sector, and this was all done very, very quietly. And that resulted in a period of enormous economic growth after 2004. So I wouldn't say that I mean, I think it's well recognized that during that period a lot of economic progress was made.
But Mr. Narayan, I would like to pursue that point further about telecom reforms. And I'd put that question to Mr. Pradeep Bejal, who had headed that initiative. In fact, Mr. Bejal tells us that he was leading Atalji's favorite programs, privatization from 2000 to 2003, and also telecom reforms from 2003 to 2006. Mr. Bejal, when Mr. Vajpayee came to power, look at the call rates. Call rates were 16 rupees and 8 paise per minute, and outgoing calls were even higher. This is what I'm talking about, 1998. 1999, 22 cellular companies reported combined losses of 7,700 crores. The sector was in a mess. What made Mr. Vajpayee realize that this sector needed immediate shake-up?
You see, I remember at that time we had 10 million mobiles. Today we have 1,000 million mobiles. So the sector has grown 1,000 times, which means that on the same wire or wireless, more calls are moving. So the calls are cheaper to deliver. There are many surcharges. The surcharges were removed. And most importantly, he believed that there should be fair competition between the players and government should interfere the least. So the tariffs were totally left to the players. And when the tariffs were left to the players, this tariff that you are talking of, 8 rupees, 16 rupees, etc., came down to 50 paise. And today you know what the tariff is. So competition, level playing field competition did the trick, which he totally believed in.
If I talk about disinvestment, clearly he had a vision when it came to the telecom sector. He trusted his bureaucrats. He had delegated his work. He was a great politician. He was an astute politician. Knew his government very well. Knew the strengths of his bureaucrats and officers. But if I talk about disinvestment, you handle that crucial department as well. And you say that we were privatizing more than one company per month. How did that happen? And how were the pace of reforms possible during that time?
One company per month was very difficult. But the entire team was charged. Entire team was charged because he had given us a task. And then he did not interfere with the ministers or with the bureaucrats and gave us a lot of space. So we were all very encouraged. And therefore, we did this one privatization a month. And it was privatization. It was not disinvestment. Privatization is far more difficult because the company goes to the private player.
So clearly, Mr. Baijal, he had that courage to take tough decisions which were in the interest of the nation. I'd like to take that thought further to Mr. Karju. Mr. Karju, you were heading that very sensitive Pakistan desk in the Ministry of External Affairs during those years. We always remember Mr. Vajpayee, and as Mr. Narayan and Mr. Baijal said, that he was very clear about what he wanted. If he was convinced that this is in national interest, he would really go all out for it. When it came to India-Pakistan relations, what really was his thought process? What was his vision?
I think his vision was simple. He wanted good ties between India and Pakistan. And that was something that he wanted from the time he was foreign minister during the Janata government. After he became Prime Minister, he pursued the same objective and he pursued it assiduously. The Lahore, the bus, the beginning of the India-Pakistan bus service, also his visit to Lahore on the inaugural movement of that bus were steps in that direction. Unfortunately, General Musharraf derailed that process through his Kargil misadventure. And when Kargil came, then Prime Minister Vajpayee's objective was just simple. It was victory. And it was complete determination to push the Pakistani intruders, the Pakistan army, which had undertaken that intrusion, beyond the LOC. And he accomplished that fully. The Indian army responded to his decision in a splendid manner and achieved that task. Also, I think the diplomatic machinery and the political machinery performed its task.
Mr. Karju, I'd like to take that point about the Kargil war, because this, I think, was a setback. It came shortly after the Lahore Declaration and the Lahore bus ride, and I'm sure Mr. Vajpayee didn't take it very well. But General Malik, you led us during the Kargil war. But could you recall the day when the war began and Pakistani troops and terrorists entered our territory, when you had that first meeting, first conversation with Atal Bihari Vajapayee? How was that meeting?
You know, actually the infiltration into our territory started sometimes in the month of April. Maybe a few patrols may have come earlier also. So initially, the intelligence reports were that some infiltrators, the jihadis, have come into our territory. And I would say, as far as Prime Minister is concerned, he couldn't really believe it. And he kept on questioning Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif, and he sent his interlocutor, Mr. R.K. Mishra, even on the 17th of May, if I recall, to find out as to what is going on. And he questioned Nawaz Sharif, and apparently Nawaz Sharif just gave an answer that he didn't know about it. But then during that period, I was abroad and I came back. When I came back and I visited the ground, then I briefed him along with my two colleagues from the Air Force and Navy in the military operations room, and I explained to him the situation was far more serious than we were expecting at that time, and therefore we needed to launch a proper tri-service operation. So he accepted that, and I think when I explained to him what is happening on the ground, he realized the perfidy, Pakistani perfidy, And then thereafter, he gave us full backing. While he controlled the political aspects, he gave us full freedom as far as military strategy is concerned, our military operations are concerned. But the best thing was that,
General Malik,
thereafter, he used to hold meetings. Yes.
Yeah, General Malik, if I could ask you, I remember one quote from you, and I think you told your men that we will fight with whatever we have. Did you in your meetings with Mr. Vajpayee express concern about the state of preparedness, the state of equipment that the army had at that point in time?
Yes, we did that. In fact, I used to write some letters also to the defense minister. And during the war also, I explained that to the Prime Minister. And if you recall, during that period, during the war period, he lifted the sanction which had been imposed on the Bofors company so that we could obtain the spares from Bofors guns and ammunition for Bofors from different parts of the world, including this company. So, yes, he knew about it, and he kept that in his mind. And he tried his best at that time to get us whatever weapons and equipment we needed. But, at the last moment, when you try and get these weapons and equipment or ammunition, it's too late, frankly. You have to have them in advance so that you are prepared to make use of them. So he was aware of the situation.
He was aware of the situation. Mr. Karju, coming to you, do you feel that his Pakistan policy, he wanted peaceful relations, he went to Lahore, he took that bus ride to Lahore, he signed the Lahore Declaration, but whenever he extended that hand of friendship, there was a setback for him. Do you think at the end of his tenure in the Prime Minister's office, he felt let down by Pakistan completely?
I think he pursued his objective of peace with Pakistan even in 2004. And it was a significant event when President Musharraf, who assured him that Pakistani territory, territory controlled by Pakistan, would not be used for terrorism against India. It's a different matter that the Pakistanis have been perfidious in this regard and have pursued cross-border terrorism. And cross-border terrorism is now part of their security doctrine against India. So, Mr. Vajpayee's objective or aim of peace with Pakistan, because I think it was part of a larger objective, which was the development of South Asia as a whole.
Okay.
And his feeling that war ultimately provides no answers. But if there is a country like Pakistan, even after Mr. Vajpayee assured them by visiting the Minar-e-Pakistan, which has been universally hailed as a gesture of the greatest magnitude to Pakistan, because as you know, Pakistan has always had this feeling that India is not reconciled to its creation. So here was a person who had been a pracharak in the RSS, who was the leader of the BJP, who went to the Minar and tried to told the Pakistanis that, look, we accept you. That partition was painful, but it has taken place and you are a sovereign country, and shed your inhibitions with regard to India. But we know what Pakistan is, and we know what their ideology is.
All right. You know, Mr. Karju, I want to pursue that point about the Agra summit, because when we spoke to General Musharraf yesterday, he said the Agra summit is a missed opportunity and both the countries were very close to signing a deal on Kashmir. I'd like to ask you about that and about the pace of reforms and the key reforms during Vajpayee's tenure as well. We're taking a short break, but we will request all our guests to stay with us.